everyone, it's Maverick.
I did it! I rigged a Vtuber, and it was such a nightmarish process. It was probably the worst thing ever, because I had a lot of issues with exporting and saving, and it was just a nightmare, and I'm gonna walk you through it, and the end result, I'm gonna warn you now, is kind of jank, and it doesn't really work the way that I intended it to, but the most important thing is that it's finished, and I am never gonna look at that model again, because I think I'm gonna have nightmares, and I am probably just gonna, on the side, work on my own personal VTubers and try rigging completely over again, because the way that I realized that the way that I made the model set myself up for a lot of failure, and so yeah, I'll walk you through the process, so let's get into it. So first things first, I am kind of starting this recording like a little bit late because I had already set up all of my layers, but honestly, it's probably not best that you learn from me anyways, because I'm sure that the way that I did it was kind of a mess, and you can see me just struggling here. I am really trying hard to figure out what things are, and essentially what you have is you have the parts kind of at like the top left, that little box right there. That scrolls up and down kind of slowly, and that's how your layers are organized in the drawing software. So for me, that'd be Clip Studio. For some artists, it's Photoshop. And then you have the deformer, which is right under that, and basically that is where you put all of your deforming meshes on pretty much anything in groups of sections or individual sections, and from there you can kind of use the parameters, which is basically saying when this input happens, then this output will happen. And so you can see like body X, body Y, body Z for the parameters, and when you move them back and forth, left or right, it can either like make the model go up when it detects you moving up, or go down when it detects you moving down. It's kind of like that, and honestly, I would not have survived without these tutorials. I'm gonna flash them up on screen, and I also put up a little like Haiori model, I believe is that's how you say it. It's basically like a model that Live2D has that you can upload and you can look at, and so that was really helpful to use as reference for kind of how I'm supposed to organize things and what different parameters mean. So it starts off with some parameters, but they're not all in folders. You can see that there's a bunch of folders here under my parameter kind of box, and I had to put all those in, but that was thanks to the handy help of this tutorial. Honestly, Kapoko is a lifesaver. This was the best tutorial that I've ever seen, and then I have other tutorials specifically for the eyes and mouth, because those are some of the more complicated parts of rigging. So yeah, this is just me honestly cursing myself. I think the full recording was about 5.5 hours. And that was all straight. I do not recommend doing this just straight, like all the way through at once, because I did that and it sucked. It was terrible. Don't do that. Don't do what I did. But, you know, I put on some music and I didn't listen to it much because I was just listening to tutorials. So yeah, honestly, not a great idea, but you know, in the end, I got it done, and that's all that matters. So really what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to figure out how the model like moves as a whole. So you can see I have a deformer that's like of the core body and of the full body. Those are basically the same thing. I don't really know the difference, and honestly, if anyone here is watching and they're like a rigging master, feel free to let me know what I'm doing wrong in the comments. And it looks so jank, okay? It looks really jank. The way that I deformed it, I did not do a very good job of it. When she's looking left and right, it looks really weird, and I spent forever trying to fix it until eventually I'm like, you know what, this is as good as it's gonna get, and it was good enough to pass, I guess. And you'll notice, like, when I was rigging the eyes, rigging the blink was fine. It's rigging the eye movement that really threw me off, but I'll get into that a little more later. So right now, I'm just kind of rigging the body. Like, I focused on sort of the bigger portions. So first it was like the body, and then it was breathing, which happens automatically under the physics tab, which will come up in a little bit. And that's me kind of animating the bow to go along with the breathing of the chest. There's a lot you can do with this. You can make, like, the boobs bounce, but I wasn't really interested in making that a huge thing. And so you see this little, oh yeah, and that happened. Sometimes things just go a little crazy. So you can see under the parameters, one of the, gosh, I'm just sitting here. This is when I'm watching a tutorial. I'm just sitting there watching a tutorial. Hold on, I'm gonna cut some of this out. Okay, so anyways, what I was saying before I got completely distracted was, you can't see it now, but there's a folder under the parameters that says move, and that's all the stuff that's going to be affected by physics, which is like when the head tilts to the side, obviously the hair is going to kind of move with it in its own sort of way. And so all of the stuff under the move tab here, you can see that's like that's the bust bounce I was talking about earlier, the earrings swinging back and forth, the hair moving slightly when the head is tilted, all that kind of fun stuff that I did not have fun figuring out. So yeah, and then here there's angles that are linked. That's why there's kind of that weird like grid box here. That's sort of mimicking, like, when you move a point around, it's sort of mimicking like looking up into corners as well. So it just makes that easier to be animated. And then I didn't want to do much animation for the arms. I mean, it wasn't really that important to me. I didn't even animate the legs. I did separate them just in case, but honestly, like, it didn't really mean much to me because I knew that I was not going to be animating a full, like, whole body rig, because that was just entirely too much. And I tried animating the bows, but they kind of looked like weird ears that were kind of perking up and down, and I didn't like that, so I got rid of most of the animation for that. It's just like a very subtle movement when the character looks up or down, and this is me just moving the hair back and forth just a little bit. And again, when we go to the physics tab where everything's gonna move, like the rules of how things move, I make that move pretty subtly because it looks bananas if it does not. You might be able to see, but this footage is also sped up like times 20, I think, maybe 40, I don't remember, but it's very, very fast, which is why you kind of see my mouse blinking all over. And I constantly get lost in this, like, I'll get in a groove, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, where am I? And I forget what I'm supposed to be doing because I just got so sucked into one aspect of it. I mean, this is a very in-depth process, and again, this was unlike anything that I'd ever done before, so I'm glad that I did it, and I'm gonna really try to get better because, you know, money, in the future, but you know, for this being like my first time, it was rough. It was very, very rough. And you'll actually see that my file is named star data 2025_06 blah blah blah, all those numbers. Well, first off, that's the date that I was doing this, so it was really not that long ago, and I couldn't name it anything because I couldn't save, which was really weird. I could not save any of my files throughout this whole process, and I'll get into this later when I try to export as well, but for some reason when I clicked file, and when you see me like clicking around and doing all that weird stuff and it seems like nothing's happening, that's the physics tab, but for some reason my screen recorder didn't capture that, and so I highly recommend, if you want to look into physics stuff, watch the tutorials that I am going to be linking here, because I did not know what I was doing, and the physics on this model is so jank, that I'm gonna need to like completely redo physics later, because listen, I'm not good at that apparently, and I did not know what I was doing. I just kind of messed around until it looked okay. So anyways, here I'm animating the blink, and like I said, this turns out fine. but it does seem like pretty jank when the eye is actually moving. And I was following this tutorial, and honestly, it made things a lot easier because I was able to know how to do masks and points, and you see me moving around all these different points to try to make the different parts of the eye blink. For this, I was very glad that I separated the eye into so many different parts. For the mouth, I realized I did not do enough for the mouth, and that's why the mouth looks really, really weird when it talks. You'll see that in just a moment. Basically, how blinks are animated, I guess, is if the eyes are symmetrical, which not every model has symmetrical eyes, but most of them do. So if the eye is symmetrical, then you can just kind of animate it like this, and when the eye is closed, you just squish everything down into the thick top lash, assuming that your art style is like that, which honestly, it's much better if it's like that. I ended up not really using the top lid. I couldn't figure out how to get it to work, so I just deleted that. And basically, you animate one eye, and then you flip it over and use it for the other eye, if the other eye is basically the same. And so that's why it's really good to have symmetry along your model when you're making it, because it makes it a lot easier to rig the process when you need to you can just animate something and then flip it to the other side, and it'll be pretty much good to go. The one that I was following was really in depth about like making a smile and then opening the eyes wide and making the eyes smile kind of like when they're closed. This is like this little upturned thing. Again, it didn't really turn out like how I wanted it to, so it didn't really end up working as well as it did when I was rigging versus when I was actually trying to use the model. The smile feature doesn't really work, but that's okay. The eye physics does. You'll see me do this a little bit later, but when the pupil, like when the eye opens, the pupil will kind of jiggle a little bit. It actually looks pretty cool. I like that part a lot. I followed, obviously, the tutorial for that one. So again, I highly recommend going to look at that tutorial. And also, I realized that I really should have separated the facial shading. Gosh, that's hard to say. I really should have separated that from the base layer of the face, because when I take the hair away, it looks like this, and it's not even clean. I didn't even realize how messy my shading was until I took away the top layer of the hair, and I was like, ooh. Oh, okay. And since the hair doesn't do anything crazy fancy, I figured it was okay. And it ended up being alright, but yeah, it's more than a little jank, but that's okay. And then I kind of deformed the eye to make it look more like it's actually rotating on a ball. And here's kind of like where things get weird, because when I was rigging it, when I was moving it kind of like throughout the corners and like the X and the Y, like of the actual like pupil and iris itself, like kind of moving up and down. You see, like it moves fine and it moves with my mouse where it's supposed to, but when it comes to actually like making the model look around, it just like straight up doesn't work. When you see me like clicking around like this, nothing's really happening. I'm on the physics tab actually like putting in values and trying to mess with stuff, but I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know how to fix it. So now when I look one way, the model actually looks the opposite way. And that's probably the biggest issue with the model now. Yeah, honestly, that's really frustrating, but I didn't know how to fix it. Obviously, the chick in the tutorial didn't have that problem. I think it's probably just some parameter, like a way that it moves that I just need to flip, like mirror, so it moves the same way, but I couldn't tell you how to do that, and honestly, I'm so done with this that I think I would probably rather just make a new model. And see, here I'm trying to figure out why the eyes are not moving in sync. But eventually I figure it out, and at least the eyes move together, right? Like, at least they kind of move, like, at the same pace, and they look in the same direction. I just can't figure out how to make them look the same direction as the face tracking. That was not something that I could figure out, and it even looked like that in the physics tab, but I thought, oh, you know, it'll be fine once I actually use the model. No, it was not fine. So, you know, that's okay. That's okay, I guess. And here I am looking at the mouth, and this was the worst part, I would say. The eyes were bad enough, but honestly, I didn't separate enough of like the mouth, and I was apparently supposed to make the top lip and the bottom lip symmetrical, like the same. I didn't, and then I was supposed to separate kind of like the fleshy bits of the lip. You can see there's kind of like a fleshy part on top of the top lip line, and that is supposed to be separate as well. And I didn't make any teeth either, which makes the mouth look kind of weird when it's open. And just the way that I drew the mouth, it looks weird when it's open. See, that's kind of what it looks like when it's open, and it just, I don't know why. I can't figure out what it reminds me of, but it reminds me of something, and it reminds me of something that makes me uncomfortable. So I don't really know how to explain it, but I don't like how the mouth was rigged. That's probably my least favorite part. I mean, aside all of the crap with the eyes, this is still probably the worst part of it. And yeah, it just looks bananas. And the way that I made the line looks all jank, and the frown, like, this is a really bad model, honestly. I would never, ever give this to someone as like a commission. If someone commissioned me to rig their model and I rigged it like this, I would feel so ashamed of myself. I would probably just like disappear off the face of the internet forever and not even take their money. I'd probably give them a refund because God, this is terrible. God, this is so terrible. And the mouth kept looking like too small, and then it was too far down the face, and then it was too big, and then it looked weird in proportion to like the rest of the face. And then it kept covering up the nose because, again, the like fleshy bit of the top lip was was attached to the line, so I couldn't really like properly squish that part down to not cover the nose without it going and like messing up the line bit itself. And also, I should have separated the nose. I didn't realize that most people separate the noses on their rigs. I definitely should have done that because when the face like looks from side to side, it's just kind of a static image that looks jank. So again, I was referencing something, like you can, if you look in my last video, I was referencing sort of how to layer your VTuber properly, but I did not layer it enough. I definitely like messed up. And so yeah, I think here I'm about done, and so we're ready to actually pop over to the actual VTube Studio. So VTube Studio is actually an app on Steam, and you can see I turned the camera on, and so I was kind of trying to figure it out. It was already sort of trying to track my face. The thing about my computer though is that I don't have an actual webcam, and the button, like the shutter button, is broken and permanently closed, so I have to like manually hold it open if I wanted to track my face. So I'd have to figure out a better alternative. I've heard you can use your phone for it, but I had no idea how to make my phone track my face, so I just use the built-in webcam, and it has this terrifying little face right here. So I'm trying to open and close my mouth, and you can see when I look one way, the model looks another, and it looks terrible. Oh my gosh. I was really sad at this point because I poured so many hours into it, but I do think that it was a useful experience because I was able to learn a lot from this. I was able to learn kind of do's and don'ts and really get my foot in the door, basically. I was able to kind of experiment with the program, especially rigging. I think rigging was definitely the hardest part, and it taught me a lot about do's and don'ts, and I think I am going to, when I make my next model, I'm going to definitely try to pay more attention to layering, because now I realize how absolutely vital and important it is. No matter how much of a pain in the butt it can be, it is incredibly important. So I definitely learned a whole lot from this experience, and I am going to for sure not be using this model at all. This model is kind of out to pasture, but I am probably going to make another one. So that was my abhorrent journey on making a VTuber model. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around until the end, and watch this next. I will see you there.